With a 12-yard touchdown pass to Zach Ertz, Marcus Mariota's strong night on Sunday was officially on, and it's just one of the plays we're pointing to as game-sealing moments from the Washington Commanders' latest victory. That and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. And you can also find me helping out with WUSA9.com's coverage of the team this season. And I'm here with you every Monday through Friday. I thank you for coming through for today's episode. Every dayers, a special thank you to you for coming through every single day. Locked On Commanders is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. And if you haven't already, please subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode, in which we're going to break down one of Dan Quinn's quotes. It's going to be the quote on the updates to Jayden Daniels' rib injury from Monday evening. We're going to give out our fan-voted game ball, and we're going to go over our sustains, improves, but starting it all off with how the Washington Commanders sealed their fifth victory of this NFL season. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use a promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Washington Commanders moved to 5-2 after a decisive 40-7 victory over the Carolina Panthers. That is a 33-point spread margin of victory. They were supposed to win by 8.5 points. And of course, as we do our after-action review every single week, that's where we start off with what was supposed to happen. Well, the Washington Commanders were supposed to win this game. This is a game that you are supposed to win if you are a team that's ascending, like the Washington Commanders are, not just in the NFC East. They've now been first place in the NFC East ever since week 2, and they continue to hold that first place spot in the division, making them one of these high-rising teams. Jayden Daniels, rookie of the week, 5 out of the first 6 weeks of the season. Not going to get it in week 7, of course, because he was only able to play on the first series before exiting the game with that rib injury. But at the end of the day, this is a game you expect the Washington Commanders to win. Still, you don't expect them to win necessarily by 33. I mean, I predicted a 14-point win. My prediction was 34-20 Washington Commanders. So I was 6 points under on the Commanders' points, and that's with Marcus Mariota as quarterback and struggling for his first 3 possessions. And then I was 13 points over on the Carolina Panthers output, maybe giving them a little too much credit. But at the end of the day, the Washington Commanders win. And that is what everybody who listens or watches this show is mostly interested in. So how did they do it? Obviously, there's a whole lot of plays in every single game, but conveniently enough for me, actually, Joe Witt Jr. himself pointed out there were 3 or 4 plays last week against the Baltimore Ravens that cost them that game. And I really enjoyed that, because something I try to do on this show every once in a while is break down 3 plays. I don't go to 4. I usually just stick to 3. 3 plays that really kind of set the pace of the game. And of course, as you can imagine, in a 40-7 victory, you've got a few options here. But on the offensive side of things, and we're not going to do offense, defense, special teams every single week, but I did it last week. I want to do it again this week, and we'll kind of play it by ear as we go through. Your more defensive heavy battles, we might go 3 defensive plays. Your more shootout battles, we might go with 3 offensive plays. We'll just kind of play it by ear. But it's not going to be offense, defense, special teams every week. This week, however, it is once again. So offensively, I went with the Washington Commanders 12-yard pass to Zach Ertz from Marcus Mariota. It's 1st and 10 on the Carolina 12, 16 seconds left in the half. The Commanders are moving no huddle. They're in shotgun. Marcus Mariota passes the ball to tight end Zach Ertz for a 12-yard touchdown play that not only extends the Washington Commanders' halftime lead, obviously, but also gives them that valuable 1-and-1. You score at the end of the half. Your opponent doesn't have time left on the clock to come through and try to get a score of their own, and you get the ball to start the second half. That is an incredibly valuable thing to be able to do. And that middle quarter that a lot of people inside the league talk about, that not a lot of people outside the league talk about, halfway through the second quarter to halfway through the third quarter, that middle quarter really is arguably the most valuable quarter of every NFL game if you can really get an advantage there. And this is an example of the Washington Commanders being able to do that, not only getting that 12-yard touchdown pass at the end of the first half, but getting a touchdown drive to start the second half. Ben Sinnott catching the touchdown pass on the other side of the half. But this play specifically, the reason I picked this play specifically is because coming into this drive where Marcus Mariota connected with Zach Ertz, he was 0 for 3 after coming into the game in replacement of Jayden Daniels. Now, they hadn't been able to put up points, fortunately, because of the run game, because the defense and some bad decisions by the Carolina Panthers, leaving the Washington Commanders in very short field situations. So that was an upside, but you obviously wanted to see the offense moving the ball a little bit better. On this drive specifically, Mariota started to find his rhythm. He was 5 for 9 on the drive specifically, and on the touchdown pass, the Commanders were in 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end, 2-by-2 alignment. So 2 receivers off to one end, 2 receivers on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Again, shotgun formation. Austin Ekeler was lined up to the right side of Marcus Mariota, and Ekeler is running what some people call a chip A. So he's running through the A gap, looking to chip block a blitzer or a pass rusher on his way out, but ultimately filtering out of the A gap into the middle of the field, kind of turning around, becoming available for his quarterback. The Panthers come with a 4-man rush. Zone coverage is behind it, deep in the red zone. On the right side of the formation, Alon Mendes-Zaccheaus basically runs straight up the right side of the field on what basically looks like a clear out. Doesn't really look like he's actually running a route to be an active receiver. Takes that outside defender away to the right back corner of the end zone. Zach Ertz is running, I'm going to call it a corner route. It's definitely a wide inside breaking kind of looping corner route that he runs. But at the end of the day, it's effective. He comes open beyond the defense. Marcus Mariota is scrambling out to his right side, and he finds Zach Ertz in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. Zach Ertz's first touchdown as a member of the Washington Commanders. Up front, good block combo from Andrew Wiley and Sam Cosmi and Tyler Biadasz on the right side of the offensive line. And there's actually a twisting defensive end that the Panthers tried to sneak in behind him. Tyler Biadasz, and I think it was a combination of Sam Cosmi and Tyler Biadasz able to stop that and prevent that inside penetration from getting to Marcus Mariota, ultimately leaving him available to find Zach Ertz in back of the end zone. Great play overall, but more specifically, kind of Marcus Mariota getting his groove in that game. And of course, that would trickle down into the second half and ultimately lead to that 40-7 win. Defensively, low-hanging fruit right here. Pick 6 by Dante Fowler on the first drive of the game. It's 3rd and 9. The Carolina Panthers are down to the Washington 25, so you're in field goal range already if you're Carolina. 3rd down and 9, 3rd and long situation. They dial up a screen. What is that? That's a classic, let's be safe, let's keep the points protected here, let's not be too bold. Andy Dalton's trying to set up the screen, throws the ball before Miles Sanders is ready because the pressure is in his face. Miles Sanders can't corral the pass. It falls right into the hands of Dante Fowler at the Washington 33. Fowler. So even if Miles Sanders catches the ball, he's going to go down at the 33. So you're losing 8 yards of field goal range if you're Andy Dalton. So just a bad decision. Just dirt. If you're the Panthers, you're saying just dirt that ball, or if you know where the routes are downfield, just throw it over somebody's head and take the field goal. Right. Dante Fowler turns into a 67-yard touchdown, pick 6. The Panthers were in 11 personnel. So again, 1 running back, 1 tight end. They were in shotgun. Miles Sanders was to the right side of Andy Dalton. It was a 3-by-1 alignment. There was a tight end and 2 receivers bunched to the field side, the wide side of the formation. And then the other receiver was to the short side, the boundary side of the formation. The Commanders had 7 men on the line of scrimmage. Single high look with 1 safety in the middle of the field. Middle of the field was closed. Looked like the Commanders had 6-man pressure dialed up, but rather quickly, Bobby Wagner and Frankie Luvu, the linebackers, kind of sniffed out what was going on, held their line of scrimmage position instead of really committing to the rush. Now, maybe that was their assignment. Can't really tell you that, but they definitely were moving forward to begin with. Typically, that gives you a rush look. Meanwhile, Dante Fowler also reads the screen, pulls up on his pass rush, stops pursuing off of the left side defensive edge, and puts him in a perfect spot to corral the errant pass. Fortunate Dante Fowler is, and I know Dan Quinn alluded to it, so I know he was talked to about it. But he's fortunate that Daron Payne is buying into this. Everybody puts in effort on every play thing, because Daron Payne's running downfield with Dante Fowler, and because of it, he's able to get in the way of Miles Sanders, who's definitely looking to race up behind him and knock that ball out of his hands. And I think that the way Dante Fowler was slowing down coming into the end zone, if Daron Payne is not there, if Daron Payne's not putting in that effort, Miles Sanders probably knocks that ball out of his hands and is likely going out of the back of the end zone for a touchback fumble. Still would be a great defensive play, would set the Carolina Panthers back on their own 20, but obviously you'd rather have the pick 6, which fortunately, thanks to Daron Payne again, ends up happening. On special teams, we went with the second half kickoff. The kickoff to start off the third quarter, Carolina kicker Eddie Pinheiro kicked the ball 58 yards to the Carolina 35 in the landing zone, or to the Washington 7, in the landing zone. Austin Ekeler was able to corral it and returned it 34 yards to the Washington 41. Great field position to start the second half. Great field position to start coming off of a touchdown drive you just had at the end of the second half. And ultimately, the Commanders get a touchdown pass from Marcus Mariota to Ben Sinnott at the end of that drive. Coming up, we're going to talk about 3 things we want to see this team continue. Three things we want to see them left behind in week 7 of the Washington Commanders season as we look ahead to week 8. Stash and Trash coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that thanks to our friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats. You can look at the live play-by-play and so much more on the exact same page where you're going to make your bets. And you can all get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So if you're a new customer at FanDuel, place your first $5 bet. Whether you win or lose that bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. So right now, the Washington Commanders are 1.5-point underdogs at home against the Chicago Bears. Maybe the Jayden Daniels injury playing into that line a little bit. Over/under on total points scored is set to 46.5. Even this early in the week, I'm taking that plus 1.5 if I'm a Commanders fan. And if it's your first bet, you put $5 on it. Even if they don't cover it, which I think they will, but even if they don't, you get $200 in bonus bets, so you win either way. So take full advantage of this latest opportunity. Go to FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, and that's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, but it's not just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even people who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't use other leading job sites. So if you're not on LinkedIn, you're in the wrong place. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process even easier for you. So join the 2.5 million small businesses that are using LinkedIn for hiring and post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Continuing now today's episode of Locked On Commanders, our AAR episodes. We talk about what was supposed to happen, what happened, 3 game-sealing plays for the Washington Commanders. And now we're going to talk about 3 things we want to sustain. So we want to keep moving forward in the next week, 3 things we want to leave behind. It's our Stash and Trash weekly episode. And if you want to get even more out of the Locked On Commanders podcast, sign up to be an insider today. Join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. From there, you can text me. I'm going to text you, and you're going to get access to our exclusive insider-only Zoom conferences. We try to do them before games every week and after games every week. We're definitely doing them after games. Before games, it's a little bit wishy-washy depending on my schedule, depending on what I got going on family-wise, but we typically try to do those on Saturday. So if you want to get involved in all the fun, all the action, join the ever-growing population of insiders, new insiders. I appreciate you coming through. Hopefully you enjoy the process. Stash or Trash time to sustain and improve. We've got 3 of them on each side of the ball, which is exactly what we try to do every single week. And the first thing that we want to sustain from week number 7 is something that this Washington Commanders team has been sustaining all season long. It's just something we saw highlighted the most this last weekend against Carolina Panthers. That is togetherness, right? You all hear the cliche of next man up. Jayden Daniels goes down. Marcus Mariota is the next man up. Jonathan Allen goes on season-ending IR. Johnny Newton is the next man up. Emmanuel Forbes injures his thumb. And Mikey Sanders still is the next man up on the perimeter. In the slot, Noah Igbenogany is the next man up. All of that. We hear it all the time. Every team preaches it. We want to be a united front. We want to be a family. We want to be a whatever. Every team talks about it. Not every team embodies it. Not every team demonstrates it. And that's exactly what you saw from this Washington Commanders team on Sunday when Jayden Daniels left the game. You'd already kind of gotten a preamble to it, right? Dante Fowler's big pick 6. The Washington Commanders come down. I'm telling you right now, if Jayden doesn't get hurt, they're scoring a touchdown on that first possession. They're going up 14-0 the first time they touch the ball. And I think that's a great way to start the game. But he does get injured. Marcus Mariota comes in. And while Marcus is trying to find his footing, while he's trying to get into the rhythm of the game, the defense comes up with another interception. They keep the Carolina Panthers from doing any damage, from making an interesting game. They give him the opportunity to get into a rhythm, and that is invaluable for any quarterback who's coming into a game relatively cold. Marcus said after the game, quote, "We have an unbelievable group of guys that just make it fun." And I think that, like, it's just one sentence, right? But that right there really just kind of shows you everything. Like in the stadium, even in the press box, guys, like remember, you have a lot of beat members here who have been here much longer than I have, who've covered a lot of losing football. I've covered a lot of losing football just since I've been here, and I haven't been here as long as they have, but I've also covered Tampa Bay Buccaneers, believe me. Yes, there have been some good years recently, but there were a lot of bad years before that one. So we all kind of have that feeling. And again, everybody gets into this business to start with because you're a football fan. So when you see the air come out of a team, when you see the air come out of a stadium like that, it affects everybody. It doesn't just affect the fans or the players on the field. It does impact the media, even though we all have a job to do and we get back to doing it. It does have an impact. Believe me, it was palpable in that press box. Fortunately, even though that vibe kind of hung over the entirety of the game, I think, and especially the post-game coverage so far, I think the team was able to get back on track. They were able to kind of continue what they were able to do, and they were able to lift up Marcus Mariota. And that is exactly the type of football that every team preaches, but only a few embody and display. The Washington Commanders did that on Sunday. So we want to see that moving forward, especially if Marcus Mariota has to play again in week 8. Trash number 1, what we're trying to leave back behind, laundry collectors. Look, not since week 2 had the Washington Commanders been called for as many penalties as they were in week 7. And you remember those week 2 penalties were really killer. They were really what ended up leading to 7 field goal tries. Fortunately, 7 field goal makes. But specifically in this game, Washington was flagged 8 times for 55 yards. Now, the Carolina Panthers were actually flagged fewer times, but for more yards. So that's a good part of it. But 3 of the 8 flags, 3/8, what is that? It's about 40%. Were pre-snap penalties, specifically on the offense, false starts. And that's a problem that was rearing its ugly head in week 2. Definitely something you want to get under control moving into week 8. Could part of that be the cadence of Marcus Mariota being different? Certainly, possibly. So we can give a little bit of a grain of salt. But at the end of the day, you don't want to see the penalty problem that was evident early on come back here in the middle part of the season. Stash number 2, the return of the run game against the Baltimore Ravens. The Washington Commanders did not run the ball very well. They also didn't run the ball very much against the Baltimore Ravens. And this game against Carolina Panthers, Austin Ekeler only had 4 carries, but he had a 4.3 yards per carry average, which is a pretty good average for most backs. But it was actually the lowest average of the entire running back group. Jeremy McNichols had the highest carrying average, getting 6 yards per touch on his 7 carries, 42 yards. And meanwhile, Brian Robinson came back from his knee injury that kept him out against the Ravens, 5.9 yards per carry on his 12 carries, and included the Commanders' only rushing touchdown of the game. So great to see the run game return against the Chicago Bears. Even if Jayden is playing, you're going to want to use that run game just as much, if not even more. Trash number 2, tight end friendly. The Washington Commanders defense has been fairly soft in pass defense, right? And rush it has been pretty soft just in general, right? Especially against the right opponents. But the last 2 weeks, specifically, the Baltimore Ravens and the Carolina Panthers were both able to get their tight ends going. Each tight end they faced in the last 2 weeks set season highs. In week 6, it was Ravens tight end Mark Andrews, who got 3 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. His best game of the year up to that point. He topped that on Monday. Rookie tight end Jatavian Sanders set a new career high on Sunday in week 7 for the Carolina Panthers in receptions and yards, with 6 for 61 yards, and had his first career game averaging more than 10 yards per catch. Chicago Bears have a pretty good tight end named Cole Kmet, and you can bet, sorry, didn't mean to rhyme there, but after watching the last 2 games of tape, the Bears are going to be looking to getting Cole Kmet rolling. Stash number 3, tackling the issues. Washington Commanders tackled really, really well this last week. PFF only tracked them as having 3 missed tackles, and not one single defender had more than 1. That is exactly the type of tackling you need to move forward. Dan Quinn highlighted that as well in his post-game press conference. Trash number 3 is actually going to be a bonus stash. Look, I'm not going to go through and nitpick a 33-point win just to be like, well, I need 3 things to improve on, so I got to find something. So I'm going to come through with a bonus stash, and the bonus stash is going to be takeaways. The Washington Commanders came away from this game +2 on the game, which makes them +3 for the season in turnover differential. That is top 8 in the NFL entering Monday night. So you want to see those takeaways continue, as well as the smart taking care of the football, no matter who the quarterback is. You want to see that continue. So 4 stashes, 2 trashes. That's what happens when you win by 33. What also happens is you give away a game ball, but we only got 1 to give. So who does it go to? It's pretty easy to determine who it's going to go to, but it was a pretty close race compared between one player and the second place player. We will get into all that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that today thanks to our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. Well, by now it's not totally new, but it's a cool feature, and it makes getting tickets for your live events even easier than ever before. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets yourself. Curated deals make it easier for you to find the best prices on the greatest seats. And my game time picks right now are showing me tickets to see the Pittsburgh Steelers visit the Washington Commanders for $215. That's going to be a battle most likely of two division leaders. So very interesting battle there. Or you can see the Boston Celtics visiting the Washington Wizards for $37, or the Philadelphia Flyers visiting the Washington Capitals for $17. And with me, I toggle on the all-in pricing feature on my app, so I have no surprises at checkout with how much I'm going to spend. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create your account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, you create your account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Special thank you to you for coming through like you do. Quinn's quote. Our Quinn's quote of the day is on the status update for Jayden Daniels. He said, quote, we'll put down is week to week. As you guys know, it's a rib injury. We'll take him through all the steps of practice and assess how he's doing and keep working it through that. We're hopeful he can play. We'll also make sure to take every precautionary step and do it smartly for the player and the man. And so I wanted to make sure I give you all the updates I had. And so it's not going to be something that's going to knock us out for long term, end quote. And that's the most important part, because this is not long term. At worst, it's short term. My initial feeling on this, and I got to emphasize, this is a feeling. This is not inside information. It's just a feeling. But I believe the broadcast when they said if the team needed to put him in, they could have put him in. And if that's the case, I feel like he's got a pretty good shot to play this week. However, we've also seen evidence from Dan Quinn in dealing with Brian Robinson, dealing with Johnny Newton, et cetera, the other injured players. He's not going to put a guy out there if he can't be authentically himself on a football field. And I think that's something that players ultimately will appreciate, even if in the short term they have to miss a game they don't want to miss. The medical staff might clear a guy and say, look, medically, you're okay. But Dan Quinn is not going to play a guy unless he's fully himself. And that is the wild card. I don't say wild card because it makes it sound like a negative, but that is the part of this that we can't predict because we're not going to be able to see everything on the practice field. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think the good news is either way, if Jayden Daniels doesn't play this week, you can probably count on him probably playing in week 9, which, spoiler alert a little bit for tomorrow's episode. We'll dive deeper into it. I think the Washington Commanders can beat the Chicago Bears with Marcus Mariota if they need to go into it that way. We got to win, so we get a game ball. Fans get to vote on this game ball every week. I put out the poll on the community tabs on the Locked On Commanders podcast page. Also text my insiders to get their votes and their quotes. And the winner this week, by a hair, Dante Fowler Jr., outside linebacker, 2 tackles, a sack, and a pick 6. Insider Daniel wrote, Dante Fowler needs a game ball for that pick 6 that was wrapped in a bow from Andy Dalton, quote unquote. Insider Marlin also said, quote, he set the tone for a dominant game. One YouTuber said, quote, 1 second, I'm thinking, here we go. They're running effectively. The next second, game over. Just like that. That's what 6, Dante Fowler, did, end quote. But it was very, very close. Marcus Mariota, a very close second. And I would not have hated if you guys voted for Marcus over Dante or Dante over Marcus. But ultimately, they're very close split on the YouTube communities tab. Insiders, most of the insiders voted for Dante Fowler Jr. A few voted for Marcus Mariota. So Marcus Mariota, great effort. Can't wait to give you some props and kudos for that effort in person. Dante Fowler Jr., you get the fan-voted game ball. And that's going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Commanders. On our next episode, we're going to dive into even more news about the Washington Commanders, but we're also going to dive into our first look at the Chicago Bears. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, all you got to do, sign up to be a Locked On Commanders insider, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders, and you just pull out your phone and you just text me like you do any other football watching friend. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL in the morning. It's the Madman Tyler Rowland kicking you off with a double shot of NFL espresso. And in the afternoon, go by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. It's the all-new Locked On NFL, and it's twice per day. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day, every dayers. Thanks for coming through like you do. And until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you next time right back here for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.